Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
It's Tuesday, November 20. This is the Alex Jones Show. I'm Paul Joesph Watson, filling in today for the first hour. Alex is out sick, so the first hour will be me. I've got some special guests coming up, and the second 2 hours of the show will be rebroadcast. But it's day 2 of the opt-out and film week. The backlash against the TSA continues. And at the bottom of the hour, we're going to be talking with Dan Dix of Press for Truth TV and TSA opt-out and film campaign organizer Ashley Jessica. You probably heard them on the show yesterday briefly. They traveled to Buffalo Airport there in New York and basically ran into some hassle. They were expecting it, of course, with the TSA. The police got involved from what I hear. Don't know the full details of it, but I'm definitely fascinated to find out. So we're going to be talking to them at the bottom of the hour. They were involved in the TSA opt-out and film campaign protest. And we're also going to be talking to a father who's running with the TSA led to his baby son laying face down on the floor, bleeding. Wait until you hear about this one. We're going to go to that here in the next segment. Kicking off with some news, though, and obviously the TSA's in the frame here. This is up on Infowars.com. Cancer victim forced to go through TSA body scanner despite opting out. Now, this is an email I received about 2 hours before going on air. I also received another email from a traveler yesterday saying basically the same thing. And it appears as if in some cases the TSA is actually forcing people to go through the naked X-ray radiation firing body scanners, even though they exercise their right, and it is their right within the United States, to opt out. They're actually forcing them, lying to them against their own TSA policy and saying that you have to go through the scanner. It's mandatory, when, of course, we know it's not. And this was a cancer victim concerned with, I mean, she's in remission now, but she was concerned by the effects of the radiation scanner. And she emailed me today to say, quote, "I was in the New Orleans airport and asked to opt out. They made me go through the X-ray and I had to go through a pat-down." So even though she went through the body scanner, she got the invasive grope down anyway. I'm sure that this is in violation of the TSA's policy. Of course, we know that's true. "I was reduced to tears," writes Lynn Baker. Quote, "I wish I had the video, but I wanted to pass this along even without. It shouldn't make any difference, but I have cancer and do not want the scans to trigger the cancer, as I am currently in remission," she adds. So basically, this is a cancer victim who was in tears crying because when she legally exercised her right to opt out of the radiation-firing body scanner, she was told in no uncertain terms by the TSA agent, "Get in the scanner now. We're going to make you do it." And obviously, you know, if you've got guys being arrested as terrorists, as bombers, for having a artistic watch, as happened on the weekend, they're being arrested as potential terrorists. Their bail's been set at, $150,000. Then there's a very significant pull to obey whatever the TSA agent says, because, of course, you could be labeled a terrorist, just as during the last National Opt-out Day protest back in 2010, which, of course, the TSA responded to by mothballing the scanners on that very day as a political stunt to try and neutralize the protest. People who opted out during that time were also characterized as terrorists. In fact, there was a segment on The View, the popular ABC show, where, Whoopi Goldberg and all the others on the show actually called people terrorists or potential terrorists simply for exercising their right to opt out. So we're going to continue speaking about this after the break with our guest, Kevin Ryan, who was the father who went through TSA security with his wife, with his baby son, and that happened after the break.
Millions of people are going to get...
We're back on the Alex Jones Show. It's Paul Joesph Watson in for Alex Jones, who is out sick. He'll be back tomorrow. Senate bill rewrite lets feds read your email without warrants. This is one of the top stories up at Prisonplanet.com. And basically, they've rewritten this email surveillance bill, which is now being introduced in the Senate. And it's worse than the first version, which people were already complaining about. This bill would allow 22, no less than 22 federal agencies to read your private emails, but not only that, Google Doc files, Facebook posts, direct Twitter messages, these are private messages, would allow 22 federal agencies to read all those communications without a warrant, without having to go to a judge whatsoever. So Big Brother's tentacles really reaching further and further. Of course, under the echelon system, a lot of that communication is trapped. 90% of all email and internet traffic is trapped and later analyzed with keyword systems. But now they're openly coming out and saying, let the feds read your email without a warrant in plain view, just as they did with Mr. Petraeus there, revealing his affair. So that's up on prisonplanet.com. Another story we've got up on there is TSA issues warning over opt-out and Film Week. And the TSA has officially acknowledged the InfoWars opt-out and film protest and warned that despite the fact it is not prohibited to film the TSA at checkpoints, local laws may allow police to intervene and prevent such activity. So basically the TSA came out in a blog post and said, yeah, our own policy says you can film, there's nothing wrong with it. But if you do, we may get the police involved and you have to obey local ordinances. Of course, the First Court of Appeals has repeatedly ruled that it is completely legal under the First Amendment to film police officers. TSA officials are not police officers. They have to go through zero training, yet they're called officers and given a nice shiny gold metal badge. But they're basically threatening anyone who takes part in this protest. They're trying to intimidate them out of doing so by saying the police are going to get involved, which is what we're going to get into at the bottom of the hour with Dan Dix and Ashley Jessica. But now I want to introduce our first guest. And this is an email I received probably a couple of weeks ago now. We received shocking stories about the TSA, the behavior of the TSA. Of course, they're in the news on an almost daily basis. But this one really shocked me because it involved a toddler. And here to talk about it is the father of that child, Kevin Ryan. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be on the show. Unfortunately, I wish that there wasn't a need to be on the show. I wish what happened hadn't happened. But thank you very much for having me.
Now, Kevin, this incident occurred at Newark Liberty Airport. You were there with your wife and baby. You've transferred to another terminal. This was in the Continental Airlines terminal. And you're on your way
Correct.
to Baltimore. You're approaching the TSA security checkpoint. Now, take the story from there. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, well, exactly as you said, we had just arrived from an international flight, and we had transferred over to the Continental Terminal for a connecting flight to Baltimore. It was quite late at night for the airport, about 9:30 p.m. As we approached the TSA checkpoint, we were the only people. But we were immediately accosted, I guess, by the TSA. They began shouting at us to move along faster, to remove our shoes and other personal items at a faster speed. Despite their aggressive behavior, we remained very respectful and proceeded with what their commands were. I had been carrying our son in a portable baby cradle. I had sat him down on the table before the X-ray to remove him from that cradle, at which time I was being constantly yelled at that I was not allowed to do that there. There was no idea as far as how I was to remove him from the cradle without putting him down, but I guess that was my problem. I proceeded to remove him from the cradle and went underneath the X-ray with him. And at that point, my wife had remained behind with a cradle and our personal belongings. Apparently, the cradle at that point had been pushed through the X-ray conveyor belt, unbeknownst to me. When it arrived on the other side of the X-ray, I attempted again to place my son into his portable baby cradle, and was again harassed and told that I wasn't allowed to do that here, and that I had to proceed to leave immediately without fastening my son into his cradle or having time really to collect my personal items. So doing the best I could, I had sat my son in the cradle and began to proceed away from the conveyor belt area as instructed by the TSA. At that point, just after picking up my son and walking maybe 3 to 5 feet away from the conveyor belt, he fell out of the cradle. One reason for that being that he wasn't fastened in. Another reason being that they had apparently broken the cradle as they had.
And you
pushed
said you
it
actually saw your wife said she
belt.
saw them
In fact,
break
my
the
wife
cradle.
Had tried to advise me, but was pulled aside by the TSA and told that she could not speak in a loud tone at the TSA area, although apparently they are allowed to, and that she had been singled out for a special security check. My son had fell on the ground and was bleeding and, of course, crying ostensibly. There was blood coming out of his nose. His lip was busted. He was bleeding, and really, it looked quite horrible. We were panicked. I tried to call 911, having just come over from a trip to Europe. My cell phone would not work. I asked repeatedly in a very loud and clear voice to the 2 TSA employees to contact 911, and they acted as if they didn't see me. They just went about their business, sort of looked at me, rolled their eyes. Meanwhile, my baby is shouting and crying and bleeding. So it was quite a horrific scene. And our salvation was a janitor who came rushing over and allowed us to use her cell phone to call 911, which did come and then transport our son to a nearby emergency room.
And so basically, there was hardly anybody in the line. This wasn't as if it was a busy morning, and yet still at 9:30 at night, they're there right from the start, shouting at you, bawling at you to get a move on when you've clearly got all this baby equipment, you're tired, you're traveling through the airport. And you said your wife actually saw them break the baby cradle. Is that right, when they put it through the scanner?
That's correct, Paul. In fact, there was nobody else in the line. We were the only people there. And she did see what had occurred, and she was not allowed to advise me of that. And just want to mention as a side point, the treatment that we received by the TSA was quite different than what we received going through 2 European airports, where the security staff there, which certainly is concerned about security as well, were very polite and made special considerations for the fact that we were traveling with a infant baby.
I mean, it's amazing. I've been to communist China, and the treatment is about 500% better than TSA and Homeland Security when I went to America, got all my fingerprints taken. Don't need to get your fingerprints taken when you go to communist China, so that just shows how unfree America is with all this security theatre. So basically, you go through, the baby cradle's broken, you try to put your son in it, he falls to the floor, and you said not just his lip was bust open, but his nose was actually broken. Is that the case?
Well, his nose was not exactly broken, because at his age, as the doctors explained to us, it's not really possible for your nose to be technically broken because the cartilage isn't fully formed. But it was close to a broken nose as possible, and his nose, he was bleeding out of his nose. The cartilage was busted. His lip was busted as well, to the extent that even now, many months later, you can still see where his lip was busted at that time. And I just want to say, even outside of what actually happened and him falling, which is horrific enough, the biggest crime to me is the fact that the TSA did absolutely nothing. So it's really my feeling that the TSA would have even let my son, God forbid, die there, if that was the case, rather than act. And so, to me, it was something that I never thought that I would ever live to see, especially in the United States of America.
And so, when when your son actually fell to the floor and started bleeding and crying, what were the TSA agents doing? Were they just standing around and chatting, or were they trying to work out what to do, or did they just not care?
They were looking at each other. They looked at me several times and rolled their eyes and began talking to themselves again. Basically, they didn't pay any attention to us whatsoever, other than to sort of smirk at us.
And then the police arrived, didn't they? And you tried to file charges. Tell us what happened with that.
That's correct. I did call 911. 911 asked if we needed an ambulance or police. I advised them both. The ambulance came, of course. The primary concern was with my son. While they were doing tests on him, I went to with a police officer. The officer asked me if I'd like to file a complaint against the TSA. I advised him that I would like to. He asked me to come with him and to identify who the TSA personnel were, which I did. At that point, he said that I should leave. And he advised me that he was going to view the video footage. I said I'd like to see that as well. I'd like to be present because I would like to file charges against those two TSA employees. And he very strongly cautioned me that I was instructed to vacate the immediate area and to find me.
We're going to go to a break now, but we'll come back and finish the story with Kevin Ryan. It's Infowars.com/opt-out. This is the Alex Jones Show. I'm Paul Joesph Watson, filling in for Alex. Stay tuned. We'll be back. We're back. It's the Alex Jones Show live. I'm Paul Joesph Watson, in for Alex, who will be back tomorrow. We've got a rebroadcast of the last 2 hours coming up after my segment ends, just after the top of the hour. We're talking to Kevin Ryan, who is a father who went through TSA security at Newark Liberty Airport. His son was with him, and his wife, his baby son, went through the security. The TSA agents actually broke the baby cradle as they put it through the X-ray scanner. He put his son in the cradle. His son fell out, lay there on the floor, bleeding, crying. The TSA agents did absolutely nothing. And then later, Kevin was basically kicked out of the airport when he tried to make a fuss out of it. Kevin, in the email you sent me, you talked about this feeling of entering into a post-apocalyptic world when you arrived there in the United States. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's no really other way to put it. It was something I just could not conceive what was possible, certainly in the country that I call home. And having been traveling and then returning, it was almost as if, as I said earlier, I had flown back not to the actual United States, but to a type of Twilight Zone USA. So it was very, very hard to believe that this was actually possible. Really, it was experiencing what people are like if they don't have souls, and I really think that that's unfortunately a fair way to describe the way the people at TSA acted. I can't imagine that they could have that much hostility towards a baby. I didn't mention when we went through the X-ray, when I went through with my son, he had a baby blanket underneath of him, and one of the TSA employees came and yanked the blanket out from underneath of him. Of course, he was crying at that point, and they said, you can't go through with the blanket, and also in a hostile tone. So they just seem to have no respect for citizens, and certainly no respects for baby. I mean, it's a sad statement when even our babies aren't safe. There's many an evil person who still has some level of sympathy for children, but apparently that's not the case with all TSA employees.
I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? They must be being trained to be rude and hostile to people as an intimidation tactic. Because, I mean, there's so many stories now, they come out on an almost daily basis. And just the rudeness, even when I go on Twitter and search for TSA stories, it's just one after another. I went through such and such an airport security 5 minutes ago. I've never experienced ruder airport security. And the fact is, it's losing the United States billions and billions of dollars of tourism money because people are just refusing to visit there now. Have you considered filing a lawsuit? Where are you going to take this from here?
Considered filing a lawsuit mainly as a matter of principle, and you know, I've told a number of attorneys that I've spoke with that you know, in order to make this more appealing for them, we don't need to be on the financial receiving end of any type of settlements. We just like to get this case out there. We just like to get reform within the TSA. Anything else they can take. We just want to. We just want to stop this from happening to other people and certainly to other babies. And I really believe it was a situation where somebody in a similar situation could have been more seriously injured or even died. So I do feel it's my responsibility to make this known and to do something. And so I appreciate you having me on the show. The lawyers that I spoke with were quite surprisingly to me, not terribly interested in the case. And they said, listen, this is really a horrific thing that happened to you, but the TSA is a very powerful engine to go up against. And, it's not something that our law firm would be interested in pursuing. So they really felt like they didn't have a chance to win the case. And just also would mention that I also contacted the TSA and gave them an opportunity to address the matter internally. And they did send me a letter in reply several months later and said they had reviewed the footage, which the police have seen and the TSA has seen, but I as a citizen am not allowed to see. And said that they saw what I was referring to, but the actions of the TSA were in keeping with their official policy, which I take as a endowment of as acceptance of what happened as being part of standard protocol for the TSA.
Well, it's a shocking story, and we'll be sure to have the article up about it on Infowars.com tomorrow. Keep us up to date, Kevin, with any developments, and really appreciate you joining us on the show today. That's Kevin Ryan. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Paul, very much for having me on.
Thank you. We're going to a break now, but we'll be back with Ashley, Jessica, and Dan Dix. National TSA opt-out and film protest. Infowars.com/opt-out. We'll be back. Stay tuned.
We're on the march. The Empire's on the run.
Back on the Alex Jones Show on this Tuesday, November 20. I'm Paul Joesph Watson, in for Alex Jones, who's out sick today. He'll be back tomorrow, rest assured, don't worry. And we're talking to Dan Dix of Press for Truth TV and Ashley Jessica, organizer, of course, of the TSA Opt-Out and Film Week campaign, which is at Infowars.com/opt-out. And yesterday, you probably heard them briefly on the show. Dan and Ashley traveled to Buffalo Airport to take part in the campaign, to hand out flyers, to do some filming. But before they even got there, they were basically detained at the border, and we're going to hear all about it, as well as what happened in the airport, which is a separate story within itself. So Dan and Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Paul.
So as I just mentioned, I mean, you told me in an email, I don't know any of the details, but you were detained at the border before you even got to the airport. Tell us what happened.
So basically, when we were driving through, they asked, of course, what our purpose was for entering the United States. We told them a little bit that we were just going to document a nationwide campaign that's going on at the Buffalo airport. When the border officer he asked what I do. I said I'm a PhD student. Then he asked Dan what he does. He said, I'm a journalist. And he said, oh, it figures. And then he started typing something in his computer, gave us a slip, told us to go to secondary screening.
Pretty much as soon as we told him what the campaign was all about, TSA, the words TSA came out. He leans into the car and looks at me and says, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a journalist and a filmmaker. And he goes, figures, pull on over to secondary. So immediately we were taken into the secondary screening area. For over an hour, they held us there before anybody talked to us. And the funny thing is, when we were in there, Ashley's the one who kind of launched the campaign. It's her car. And we're sitting there, me and her and my friend. And when it came time for us to talk to customs, they just said, Dan, come here, please. And all three of us get up and they say, no, just you. And he had a few more questions for me and basically asked me, questioned me for maybe 5 or 10 minutes and then pretty much let us on their way. Didn't have any questions for them.
No, he asked Dan if I was the spokesperson for the campaign.
Yeah, we told him what the campaign was. I guess he did a quick Google search or something. I see him there typing it in, and he looked it up. He said, "Let me go talk to my superiors here." And then he came back. He said, "She's not the spokesperson or anything." I was like, "No, I don't know." And he said, "Okay, go ahead." So slight little snag there at the border. It was kind of half expected, but
one thing I did.
Go ahead.
Sorry. One thing I did notice in the secondary screening area, there was a big picture of Janet Napolitano's face, which is framed on the wall there.
A la 1984.
Yeah. So that was pretty eerie.
Creepy. So basically you were treated as suspicious simply because you were a journalist, Dan. What kind of questions did they ask you?
Basically, what's the whole point of this thing? What's your purpose? What's this for? Where's this going to show up, basically? And I just, told them straight out, because we have nothing to hide. We're not doing anything illegal. There's no reason to lie to them in any way at all. So I said, we're going down there to document this campaign. It's gained national attention. It's been on CBS and Huffington Post and all over the news. It's a big national campaign. And I'm a journalist. So we're interested in this topic, and we want to go down there to interview some people, to get some footage of this campaign, and to just document the event. And he asked me, where's this kind of stuff going to be showing up? And I just said YouTube. And that was pretty much it. And he had to go and confer, just double check with his superiors before he let us go. But that was pretty much the line of questioning. What's the point of this? What are you doing? And where is this going to end up? So I just answered his questions, and I guess they had nothing else on us, because like I said, we're not doing anything illegal. It's perfectly within our rights. And so they had to just let us go on in. And so it was a slight snag there. They held us up just for a little over an hour.
Yeah, a little stressful.
Well, I mean, you were probably expecting harassment, but you were probably expecting it at the airport, not at the border, I guess.
I was kind of half expecting it at the border. We were prepared for it. I'm glad that it wasn't worse than it was there.
Just the attitude of that.
The attitude,
of the guy, just the way he looks at me and he goes, "Yeah, figures. All right, pull over."
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
The car's ripped apart. I didn't know what we were in for based on his attitude.
So I mean, finally you get out there after being delayed for so long. Now, to be clear, I don't even know what happened at the airport yet. I'm as interested as all the listeners to find out. So you get to Buffalo. Take the story from there.
Probably within the first minute of finding the TSA checkpoints, and within the first minute of us pulling out our cameras, we were surrounded by TSA agents at first, who were just kind of checking us out, and they're all on their phones and radios. And then within another minute or so, we were surrounded by these another agency, guys in white suits with their badges and stuff. And I guess they're the transit
police. Yeah.
Airport transit security.
Airport transit police, NFTA.
Transit police. I call them 4.5s, not quite a 5.0. So they surrounded us right away and had a lot of.
Do you think they knew you were coming?
No, they did. Well, as far as I know, they didn't. It seemed they were, wondering what we're doing, and it was the first they heard of this. They were curious to see the flyers.
They were alerted by the TSA at the airport.
So yeah, they surrounded us at first, and immediately said, you can't be filming over there. And we right away asserted our rights and said, actually, we can. We even double checked on the website. We are allowed to film the TSA. We can film the area as long as we're not pointing the cameras at the monitors. And they said, well, can you just stop until we double check to confirm that that's true? They didn't even know their own laws.
It seemed like they were very uninformed of the laws. One of them even slapped Dan's camera shut.
That's true.
Very aggressively.
True. He smacks my LCD lens, the screen there, closed. And I open it again. He smacks it shut again. And I said, you cannot touch my equipment. In fact, one of his superiors later came up to me and basically apologized for that incident and said, we're going to speak to him about that. He had no right to touch your camera gear. Of all the guys that were there, I have to say, one guy in particular was very, very calm, very collected, very cool, exactly how it should go. And we'll certainly be able to show that once we get this video put together.
Yeah, he was very interested in hearing more about the campaign. He's very open-minded. So that was really refreshing to see.
So what strikes me, though, before we get into more of what happened, is how dumb they are. If they just leave you alone, let you film the checkpoint for a while, hand out some flyers, for an hour or two, then no incident happens, and the footage that you get is quite banal and not very interesting, but it's the very fact that they have to intervene and they have to cause an incident that gives you the footage and turns it into a story. So, I mean, does that strike you as dumb, or are they just, trained to do that and they fear they'd lose their jobs if they didn't?
It's quite odd, quite ridiculous, really. And as you said, they approach us and end up engaging in conversation with us. And I had some very interesting conversations with those guys. We haven't even checked our own footage yet, but I can't wait to go over it all. And because there's a lot to remember, we were talking to those guys for hours, and they disclosed a lot of information, a lot of stuff that I was surprised they were being so candid with and telling us about. One of the guys was saying, he says, their whole screening process isn't very good. He said their training isn't very good. It only takes 2 weeks. Anybody can get in and do this kind of thing. They were very candid in speaking with us, the one guy anyways.
Yeah, and he was saying that they're not exactly particularly fond of the TSA either.
That's true.
Yeah.
The very own security, airport security there was saying, you know what, guys? The one guy actually was saying, you know what you're saying makes sense to me. I mean, he's like, I'm kind of starting to wonder about it all now because everything you've been telling me makes sense. So I'm gonna start to look into this a little bit, which of course is the whole goal of the campaign.
Yeah, exactly.
To raise awareness about this stuff, get the word out. Raising awareness was an issue, though. They didn't let us hand out flyers.
Right. So they said that we could be arrested for soliciting. They were sort of going back and forth about that. They weren't sure. But
what exactly are you supposed to be soliciting? You're just giving out information.
Exactly. That's what we said. But
they just said, look, you're soliciting, and you can't hand out the flyers. So. It was all about just talking to the people in line and letting them know they have the option to opt out. So we said, you know what? Let's not let this deter us. We're still going to talk to these people, all of these passengers who are about to be faced with this choice of going through this very dangerous machine or getting the pat down. We're still going to talk to them and inform them, even though, we can't give you the piece of paper.
So I just held it up and told them, went through point by point what the campaign is about. And a lot of the travelers were so open-minded. A lot of them didn't know about the health risks associated with the body scanners. Some of them didn't even know that they could be sexually assaulted by the TSA during a pat-down procedure. So many of the travelers said
they had the right to opt out, because I found that we sent reporters down to Austin, Bergstrom, and half the travelers didn't even know they had the right to opt out. Did you find that, or were they informed about it?
I found that some were informed and some weren't. It was kind of a mix. I would say a lot of them didn't know that they had the right to film. So that was something that they were unaware of.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of them had no idea that you are actually allowed to film your pat downs, and it's for your own safety and your own protection. You might need it, who knows, in the future as some evidence or something. So it's fully within your right to document when they are giving you this intrusive and invasive pat down. Most people had no idea about that. They were surprised. They said, "Oh, I didn't know that." So that was good. But everyone was very receptive to the information, though.
Very much
which
so.
Was great.
Yes.
So they left you alone for a while, did they, and allowed you to film and take the story from there?
They did, but then at the end, the chief of the NFTA Transit Police came up to us and said, he doesn't know what the TSA policy on filming is. We tried to educate him on it over and over again, and he said that, he doesn't know about it, and in his opinion, we're not allowed to film, so he's saying we can't film the TSA checkpoint.
And I said, well, in fact, we can. I even double-checked the website before I came here, and he says, well, so you say.
Yeah.
And the one guy was saying, can you just not point it that way, the camera? towards the checkpoint. And I said, you know, I'm sorry. That's the whole point of coming here, was to film the TSA. So I'm sorry, but no, I'm not going to point the camera the other way at nothing, a wall. You know, they didn't even, like you said, Paul, the funny thing is they didn't even know their own rights. They had to double check. I got asked for ID, for example.
Yes, that's another thing. They kept asking us over and over again for our names. And
when I told them, I do not have to present my ID to you, the one officer there was a little taken aback and was, of course you do, kind of a look on her face, and said, you know, what do you mean? And I said, well, do you suspect us of committing some sort of a crime? You know, we haven't done anything wrong. We're not doing anything illegal. We don't have to present our papers here.
This is America, land of the free. You don't have to present your papers on demand. Sorry, go ahead.
That reminds me. I had a conversation with the chief of police there, and I said, you know, it's places like Germany where you have to present your papers upon request. And he said, good. That's how it should be.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
as in Germany.
Yeah, exactly. The chief there, their boss said that.
Like Germany. Great. Well, I'm sure he's been trained well. So, the police basically threatened to, if you don't stop, then we're going to arrest you. Is that what happened?
Pretty much. Well, just with the soliciting, as they called it. And again, the one lady admitted, I'm not even positive if this is considered soliciting or not. But at that point, you know, we said, you know what, let's just continue to do what we came here to do. We'll inform the people of their options. We'll film the TSA and not let that little snag slip us up there. But we're really looking forward to putting this video together. Really interesting conversations. The topic of 9/11 came up a bunch of times.
Yes.
The one guy mainly was saying, well, 9/11, right? I mean, look what happened there. Obviously, we need to, you know, these are all necessary procedures, and nothing has happened since 9/11. And I said, well, sir, maybe that's because there's no real threat to begin with in the first place. And he just kind of stared at me for a second and said, you will have to agree to disagree on that. But the topic of 9/11 came up a number of times, suggesting this is why we're doing this. And I tried to explain to them, guys, this is a very, very slippery slope, an incremental push towards a very tyrannical police state. I mean, there's nations that have just awoken to this police state and they don't realize how they got there. So unless we address these things as they arise in these small incremental steps, we too could very soon wake up in this police state going, what on earth has happened? What is going on here? I tried to explain that to them. Luckily, obviously, the cameras were rolling the whole time. So we can't wait to show you guys some of the interesting conversations we had with these guys.
Yeah, we got so much on film.
Well, I can't wait to see it. I mean, yeah, on the topic of 9/11, I mean, the TSA was created shortly after 9/11. Of course, 16,500 employees. That's now up to 60,000. And they've failed to catch a single terrorist, but they are quite good at letting weapons through, you know, stealing iPads, stealing people's money, smacking people in the testicles who refuse to go through a body scan. I've actually received emails over the past 2 days from several different people saying that the TSA at different airports is forcing people to go through the body scanner, even if they opt out, even if they say, I want to exercise my right to opt out. The TSA is forcing people to go through it. And even a cancer victim who was in tears, they forced her to go through the scanner. So I'm wondering if that's a general thing or if it's in response to this week's opt-out protest. We're going to continue to talk to Dan Dix and Ashley Jessica. Dan Dix, of course, pressfortruth.tv. Ashley Jessica, who's helped us organise this campaign. It was her idea to begin with. We're going to go to more news stories about the TSA that actually came out publicly and issued a warning that people could be arrested by the police if they take part in the TSA opt-out and film week campaign. That story's up on Infowars.com. And basically they admitted that their own policy says people are allowed to film at checkpoints in airports, but local ordinances and laws could mean that people would get harassed by the police. Of course, the First Court of Appeals has ruled repeatedly that filming police in the United States is not illegal. Apparently, some TSA officers, as Dan and Ashley just described, think that they're above the law, even though they're not technically officers because they have to go through absolutely zero police training whatsoever, but they still get to wear the shiny badge and feel powerful while they're groping children. So we're going to go to Dan and Ashley Moore after the break on the Infowars.com Alex Jones Show. Stay tuned, we'll be back.
Have you ever wanted to generate...
More breaking news on the TSA as we return on the Alex Jones Show. I'm Paul Joesph Watson, in for Alex Jones. TSA reportedly exposed breasts of Ralph Hall's teen grandniece, called it accidental. And this is a Republican congressman from Texas. His grandniece, a 17-year-old girl, went through security at LAX airport, and the TSA agent, in the course of the pat-down, exposed her breasts in public. This is a big breaking story. Just amazing. I say every day the TSA gets caught out in a new scandal. I mean, sometimes it's multiple times daily. I've never known another organization or branch of government agency that can get so much bad publicity and yet still remain not only in one piece, but growing thousands upon thousands of new agents each year, thousands upon thousands of new unannounced checkpoints each year, not only in airports, that's key to emphasize, but also highways, of course, political events, music concerts, prom nights, you name it. The TSA is expanding, and that's why we're standing up against it during Opt-Out and Film Week here. So, Dan and Ashley, any other points about what you experienced? I mean, were you able to film some of the pat-downs? Did you notice the TSA being any less invasive because you were filming them?
That's quite possible. We were filming some of that, some of them walking through the machine, some of the pat-downs. And we made that point to some of the passengers walking in, is the fact that, you know, when you have those cameras rolling, it protects you. It acts as a layer of protection. They may think twice about doing some of the things that they would normally do when they're under the eyes of the camera. So we pointed that out to the people walking in there as well. And as far as, like you said, they're just expanding big time. That all comes back to the fact that they're not really doing any serious training or real background checks. They're just bringing on anyone and everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
what advice would you give to other people who are thinking about taking part in this opt-out and film campaign this week?
Just know your rights. Assert your rights when the TSA or airport police try to intimidate you, and
stand your ground. Absolutely. Because these guys don't even know their own laws, half of them.
It's ridiculous, really ridiculous.
A good idea that we would suggest people do is maybe look up on the TSA's website and find the page where it talks about the fact that you are allowed to film the TSA and the checkpoints, and print that out. Because no doubt they're going to challenge you on that. They're going to say, you know what, I'm not sure about that. Let me check into that. And at that point, you can just pull it right out of your pocket and say, here, I'll save you the time. Here it is right here.
Exactly.
I'm allowed to do this. So that's something people can do. You know, print that sheet out, have it on you in your pocket while you're there, and bring plenty of battery power, plenty of tapes, whatever you need. You don't know how long it's going to take. And just as we said, stand your grounds, know your rights, because these guys don't, and just assert your rights to them. Let them know, look, I don't have to give you my ID. I can't continue to film. I'm not going to point the camera this way. You know, we're here to take part in this campaign, and you can't stop us, basically.
And I guess if you could find some public property, it might be worth also handing out the flyers outside the airport.
I think that's a great idea, to avoid the harassment and being threatened with arrest for soliciting. I think that's the best idea. Hand it out to travelers walking inside. Let them know. I think the most important thing is to just alert as many people as possible about the campaign, about their right to opt out and their right to film, and why it's so important to do both.
The thing that gets me about it is, you know, I go on Twitter and search TSA opt-out. Most of it is people laughing and joking. There's actually one I saw today about a woman who laughed. It's Paul Joesph Watson in for Alex Jones on this edition of the Alex Jones Show. Alex will be back tomorrow. We're going to do a rebroadcast starting in about 5 or 6 minutes' time. Breaking news at Infowars.com. TSA tacit threat to opt-out journalist. We know who you are. The TSA has publicly slammed a journalist who opted out of an X-ray body scan and then reported that her genitals were groped by an agent who refused to provide her name and even wore her TSA badge upside down to avoid being identified. So the TSA is now publicly naming journalists who opt out of the body scanner and who write stories about it, just as they put the CNN journalist on a list when he wrote critical news stories about the federal agency. They actually target people who criticize them. It's occurred on a number of different occasions. We've got their internal memos attesting to that. Still waiting the internal memos on the fact that during the last National Opt-Out Day campaign, the TSA mentioned the Drudge Report, Alex Jones and Infowars.com. In their internal memos, 9 pages, they refused to release them under the Freedom of Information Act request. They're still holding on to them. We still don't know what's contained in those memos. We're talking with Dan Dix and Ashley Jessica, who were involved in the campaign yesterday there at Buffalo Airport. Dan and Ashley, just closing thoughts. When do you expect to get your video up on YouTube, and any closing thoughts about what you experienced at the hands of the TSA?
Well, you would know when the video is going to be out.
Yeah, I'll be tomorrow, so we'll be getting it up as soon as we possibly can. Likely by tomorrow night, or by most likely Thursday by the latest. That's the plan. And I know you got some stuff planned.
Yeah, I just want to let people know I'll be continuing to visit airports in the U.S. throughout the week. I'll be at Albany, New York airport this weekend, most likely. And I'm not going to let a little harassment stop me from spreading the message and alerting people about the campaign.
And Ashley, tell people how they can contact you to get involved in that.
Yeah, so people can contact me on Twitter at Ashley Jessica. And also, you can go to the Facebook page. Just search Opt Out in Film Week in the Facebook search engine, and you can send me a message through there.
And if people want to tune into the video, you can check that out at pressfortruth.ca. And of course, I'll have it on my YouTube channel as well at youtube.com/weavingspider.
Okay, guys, thanks for joining us. Ashley, keep us up to date on what else is happening this week. Of course, Infowars.com is going to have the latest TSA opt-out and film news, and we really appreciate your guys' activism. It's an inspiration to others to get involved in this campaign, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. There you go, Dan Dix and Ashley Jessica. We're going to wrap it up shortly on this edition of the Alex Jones Show. We're going to go to a rebroadcast with some of the best interviews from recent Alex Jones shows. But just to re-emphasize, the campaign information is at Infowars.com/opt-out. It's about opting out of the ridiculous TSA obedience training measures, not just the body scanner, but also the chat downs, the drink tests, and everything about it. And also using your First Amendment rights to film the TSA, which is perfectly legal. It says so on the TSA's own website, no matter the fact, as you heard in the last segment, the TSA doesn't actually know its own policies. It is on their website. You're allowed to film. So we encourage people to do that. And it's all at Infowars.com/opt-out. And of course, throughout the week, I'm going to be writing numerous articles about this campaign, about the latest scandals involving the TSA. And that will all be at Infowars.com and Prisonplanet.com. That's going to do it, though, for this edition of the Alex Jones Show rebroadcast. Coming up, stay tuned for that. Alex is out sick. He'll be back tomorrow. I'm Paul Joesph Watson, Infowars.com for all the latest TSA news. And this is the Alex Jones Show. Stay tuned for more interviews after the break.